This tutorial will teach you how to make a 5-wrap bracelet for both men and women, and I'll also show you the best starting techniques and the best ending techniques. What you'll need is 1.5mm round leather cord, some matching thread. Wax nylon 2-ply Silamide thread is my favorite. You'll need a beading needle, either collapsible or big eye. You need one 2-hole button, approximately 14mm by 10mm, with 2mm sized holes. This is important so that the 1.5mm leather will fit through it. You'll need a measuring tape and some sharp scissors. You'll need 4mm sized beads or gemstones, 32 inches of beads for women's, and 36 inches of beads for a men's. You'll also need a beading board or something similar to attach your work to. I designed the beading board you see here because I grew tired of constantly readjusting and resecuring my work to continue beading. You can use a clipboard or beading tray as well, but keep in mind you will need to readjust and resecure your work when necessary. With my beading board, you don't have to do that. Okay, so let's get started. Cut a piece of leather 84 inches long if you're making this for a woman, or 92 inches long for a men's bracelet. Fold the leather in half evenly and then feed the loose ends through your button. Slide the button up close to the loop and then secure the loop to the hook on your beading board if you're using mine. Or you can use a binder clip to attach it to your beading tray, or clipboard has the clamp on there as well. And then secure the loose ends by pulling them tight all the way down. And again, you can secure the ends using a binder clip. Now you're going to cut a piece of thread about 2.5 yards long and fold it in half. Take the looped end of the thread and place it up through the middle of the leather cords, and then pull the loose ends all the way through to form a lark's head knot. And then push your knot all the way up to the button and pull the thread tight. Grab your needle and thread both loose ends of the thread through the needle, leaving a tail. Always keep the tail out of the way and readjust the tail as needed throughout. Thread your first bead on. We will be using a figure 8 pattern throughout this process. Now, take your needle over the top of the cord, down through the middle, under the other side, and then go over the top of that leather cord, back through the bead, and then down the middle, under the other side to complete your first stitch. Make sure you maintain control over the thread at all times by keeping it even and tight. Don't be afraid to pull it tight. Silamide thread is strong. Now, on the first bead only, you're going to sew through that same bead one more time the same way. So again, you're over the top of that one cord to begin with. Go through the bead, under the other side of the cord, over the cord, back through the bead, as such. And then you're going to go down through the middle, under the other side, and pull it tight. And again, keep the thread even, tight, and secure. This is going to make for a nice, neat stitch. Now you just continue adding beads the same way, except on the rest of the beads, you only have to go through them one time. So again, going over the top to begin with, through the bead, under the other side, over, through the bead again, under. Make sure you keep your eye on the thread tail, because you need to adjust that, making sure that it doesn't get in the way and included in your threading. That'll create a mess. So what you want to do is just continue beading until you have about 1 foot of slack left in the thread, because you'll need that slack to tie off the thread and then add more thread. The reason I only work with a maximum length of 2.5 yards of thread at a time is because anything longer than that is almost impossible to work with. So it is necessary to do this. Okay, so I'm pretty much at a point here where I've got about 1 foot of thread left. So right now I'm sewing on 1 more bead the same way, using the figure 8 pattern. And now to tie it off, what I'm going to do is sew backwards. So going over that leather cord through the bead, underneath the other side, back through the bead, and then under the leather cord on that other side. And this is where things change, because you want to go back behind the stitching on the next bead, back in that little space there, and you'll see how the thread lays perfectly over the stitching. So you're coming over the cord now, going through the bead, and now you're going to go down under, but go behind that bead. Go down under, pull that thread over. Now go back through that same bead, but this time when you go back through that bead, leave the thread over the top of the other side of the cord, and then go back to the next bead back, going under and up through that space there, and then take your needle through the bead, and then down and under that little space there, and then back through the same bead you just came from, back through that bead, over, stay over the top of the leather cord, and then again go 1 more bead back, up through that space, and then through that bead, over the top of the cord. Now I like to go back 4 beads, you can go back 3, that's fine. Now here's where I've gone through enough. So now I'm going to do what's called a slip knot. So I'm going to take the needle down behind that strand of thread, and then I'm going to bring it up on the other side of that thread that's coming out of the bead. And I'm going to take, keep control over that loop you got, so you can put your finger through it just to, so it doesn't pull through. Because right now you're going to take your needle now and put it through that loop and then pull it tight. And at this point you want to take your needle off and just simply tie 2 simple knots. Very easy. Pull it tight, don't get carried away with the thread. You don't want to break it, but again, Silamide is pretty strong and you want your knots to be tight. So now you've got your 2 knots and you want to cut off the excess thread. So you're going to grab your scissors and kind of slide them down right over the top of that knot and trim off the excess thread. And you'll be able to see a little bit of that knot. So take that last bead that has the knot in it and just roll the bead back and forth until the knot is hidden. And there it is. So now we're going to add another 2.5 yards of thread the same way we did in the beginning, by folding that thread in half, bringing the loop up under and up through the leather cords, and then putting the ends through that loop to make that lark's head knot. Now once you've sewn on enough beads, that'd be 32 inches of beads for women's and 36 inches for a men's bracelet, you're ready to tie your leather ends. So what you want to do is tie overhand knots. So keeping your leather even and uniform. Just tie a simple overhand knot, keeping it somewhat close to the last bead. And once you're happy with how it looks, then pull each leather end separately and tightly to secure that. So the next knot you tie will complete your first button closure. So tie another overhand knot the exact same way, and the space between your first knot and your second knot needs to be just slightly smaller than the size of your button. If you make that opening too large, then your bracelet's going to fall off all the time. So you can do a little test and put the button through to make sure that it's going to stay. So then you want to tie 2 more knots for a total of 4 knots to create your 3 button closures to make that an adjustable bracelet. And just make sure that your openings are all pretty much the same size, and keep your leather cords nice and even and uniform. But just make sure you pull each end nice and tight. So now you want to grab your scissors, and about 1 inch from the last knot, you're just going to cut a diagonal direction and cut those off. So look at that. You are finished. You have now completed your beautiful wrap bracelet. I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to make a comment and I will respond to you.